Live. My name's Dave Solberg, and I am the managing editor. And like Paul Harvey would say, or Steve Harvey would say, I am your host. So anyway, we'll get started. The second day of summer is today, and one of the longest days of the year. And so the first question we have here is Dave asks, is there a video on how to pack fifth wheel bearings? I hear you are supposed to do it yearly, but I have been doing it maybe 1 to 3 times a year with less than 1,500 miles total. So once a year doesn't seem practical. There is a video, I think that was posted that Carol did on packing fifth wheels. So search for that. It wasn't necessarily on a fifth wheel, but it was very similar. We went over it a little bit on the travel trailer that we had on the inside. And the manufacturers recommend once a year, but they have no idea how many miles you're putting on it, what kind of weight you're putting on it. So one of the things that I would recommend is to, go out and weigh your coach first, take it to a CAT scale and figure out how much weight you have, just to make sure you're not over the GVWR, because those bearings are going to get hot and dry out a lot faster. And then a tool that I always recommend that people take with them is this here. This just happens, it's an infrared thermometer. And what I did is actually I ran a company where we had 3 guys on the road constantly with utility trailers, and they were burning up bearings out in the road, and that costs a fortune to get those replaced or packed when you're on the side of the road. So every time they stopped, they would take one of these. We get them at Harbor Freight. They were like $9.95 or something like that. And we would just do get it onto... there we go. And you can see by the deal here, 73 degrees on that. So what I would have them do is I would have them, every time they stop for fuel, and you don't have to do this all the time, but every time they stopped, I wanted to make sure they were putting some pretty heavy duty miles on these, 100,000 miles a year. And so they would do the hub, they would do the bearing cap, and they would do the tire. And I would have them write that down. And you could kind of get a feel for the ambient temperature. If it's 75 degrees outside, it's not uncommon for those things to run 20, 25 degrees hotter, especially if you're driving on blacktop. But when they spike up into that 110, 120 degree range, then something's happening with those bearings inside, or the brake drums. The brake system might be set up a little too tight on those stuff. But this is a great instrument to have to make sure that you understand what's happening with the heat of that bearing. And that's going to kind of tell you when those should be repacked a little better. And so, it's not just once a year, it's kind of by the mileage and the weight that you're doing. Now, if you're doing it, 3 times a year, one of the things that I would highly recommend is to go out and get one of the automatic pack systems that are available at auto parts stores. The old fashioned way is you clean all the bearings out, and then you put a little grease in your palm of your thumb, and you just work it around and get them the inside. And that's all good and fine when you're doing some light duty work with it. But the automatic ones are literally a cone. You put that bearing in it, and then you just put a little pressure air in it, and the grease just fills that entire bearing up. That way you got everything covered in it. It's a lot faster. It's a lot cleaner. You also might want to look at, I don't like Bearing Buddies as much because they just kind of pack everything with grease and then they throw it all over the tire, it seems like. But Lippert and Dexter both have a bearing, an axle that literally you put it in the grease zerk, and it pushes grease through the bearing, and it comes out the backside and pushes the old grease through. Now, it doesn't replace packing once a year, but it might help reduce the number of times you do have to pack just by getting some of that old grease out of there if it's getting really hot. So that's something I would definitely look into. Both Lippert and Dexter have that axle. Okay, how difficult it is to add a second battery to my TT, says Deborah. And TT is travel trailer. It's pretty easy to do as long as you have the space. That's the whole thing with travel trailers is normally they're going to be up on the tongue if you have a tray that's big enough to do it. So if you have one battery right now, you can add a second 12-volt battery, and you're going to hook them parallel. It's called positive to positive, negative to negative, and then out from there. That way you have a 12-volt system still, but now you've doubled your amp hours that are in it. So you don't have to do any more wiring or anything in the coach itself. Just make sure you get the same gauge cable that you're going to connect that is going back to the distribution panel with it. So pretty easy to do. You also want to make sure you get the same size. Now, one of the things you got to be careful is if you have a battery right now that's not holding much of a charge, it's sulfated, it's kind of weak, you don't want to put a second battery in there brand new, because that battery is going to drain that other one down and ruin it pretty fast. I would recommend getting 2 new batteries if your one is already a little bit weak. All right. So Mike, absent the availability of a cat scale to weigh my rig, Class C Gulfstream BT Cruiser, can I use the tire inflation recommendations on the tires? Yeah, and you can do that. The other thing I would look at is if your manufacturer put a tire recommendation inside that. So what he's talking about is that on the side of the tire, they have a tire inflation recommendation, and it will say X amount of PSI at maximum load capacity. And what they're saying is that tire should be pressurized to, and yours is probably going to be up close to 100 PSI at maximum weight. And you said it was a Gulfstream BT Cruiser, so you got one of the smaller units, that's either on a Mercedes chassis or something like that. So you're probably in the 80 psi range or something like that. You can go, and that's safe. If you can't weigh it, then go by that tire recommendation. And the only thing you're going to have there is if you're not loaded to full capacity on it, you're going to get a rougher ride. You might see some excess tire wear in the center because it's ballooning just a little bit, but keep an eye on those tires and that tread and just see where it's at. Cat scales are all over the country, and I would just recommend do a catscale.com search and put in your zip code, and you will find dozens anywhere around you. Anywhere, you take a trip, it costs $10. So it's a pretty simple way to get in. But yes, you can use that tire marking on the side. Matt asks, should we disinfect my onboard water tank during the season between uses, maybe a month or so between each? And it's a good idea to disinfect occasionally. And really it depends on the quality of water that you're using in that freshwater system, because most of the time you're using water that's coming from a campground that is a well system. It's not conditioned. You could have some bacteria in it. You could have some arsenic. You could have, zinc, copper, all the other materials in there. And the longer that sets, sometimes that bacteria will start to grow inside of it. So I'd say, and heat, is another thing that really enhances that stuff. So you can have mold, you can have algae, you can have a lot of different components in it. So every once in a while, it's a good idea to do that. There are a couple products that are out in the market, and I think I have I guess that I did leave that upstairs. The Thetford does have a freshwater cleaning and conditioning. These aren't it. So anyway, Angie said move them up, but this one happens to be it. You just can't see it. No, they have a 2-part system that's a cleaner and a conditioner for your water system and your water tank. You just put them in there, drive around a little bit, and then basically run it through all the faucets inside. I typically use bleach. I take a quarter cup per 10 gallons and just fill the freshwater tank up, let it sit overnight, and then run it through the outside. Some people don't like the smell of bleach, so you can get you can use vinegar. It's not quite as effective, but usually the bleach dissipates in a really short amount of time. And you can also now get the bleach that doesn't have that chlorine smell to it. There's a variety of different ones. So yes, I would recommend cleaning it and sanitizing it every so often. And again, it really depends on the quality of water you're running through it. I have a travel trailer that we bought used, is in very good condition, but has a camper smell. Not a terrible smell, but quite strong, and everything in the camper, whoops, it just shot up, including our clothes, absorbs that smell. Is there a way to get rid of the smell and prevent it from coming back? Usually what I see in that, is kind of a mold and mildew smell. A lot of your smaller campers will get condensation, and then when it heats up, that starts to get kind of a moldy, musty smell in it, and it's not aired out very well. So, the first thing you need to do is get some airflow going through that. Open up your vents, get your doors, get a fan in there that can go through that. Get some damp rid. You need to really dry that out. I know that some people will take and bring it home and get a dehumidifier and put that in, just let it run for 2 or 3 days. You can get the dehumidifiers that also have kind of a scent that you can put, excuse me, into the exhausting air that goes out. You just got to make sure you like that scent. There are some some odor products that are out in the market. One of the things that I have found, Winnebago had a process of getting formaldehyde out, and that's the other thing that you're going to find too. The cheaper the trailer, the more glues they're going to use in the woods, the panelings, the carpets. So you get kind of a formaldehyde smell as well. And one of the things that you can do with that is they've got a charcoal bomb that you basically put a big pan of charcoal in and get a fan that just allows that to run through the whole area, and that charcoal will absorb any mold or some of the smells that go through it. So those are the things you're kind of looking for, is dry it out and air it out really, really well. JST on YouTube. Okay, JST on YouTube I would suggest that you use quality bearings like Timken and a good quality bearing grease. I use Lucas Red Grease, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up too. That you have no idea what kind of bearings are in that, and a lot of times trailer manufacturers will use the cheapest axles, the cheapest bearings you can find in there. If you take it to somebody, or somebody before you took it to somebody to get new bearings put in, they probably use the cheapest ones that are out there. And so that is a good point. Get good bearings, good grease. You probably will reduce the amount of time you have to do that throughout the year. How often do you recommend we equalize our 6-volt batteries that are wired in series, then parallel, to give 450 amp hours? We've not done too much boondocking this last year. And battery manufacturers recommend that your batteries be equalized or conditioned once a month, even if you're not using them, because they are going to draw down a little bit. And what this means is that when your batteries drain down, sulfur coats the plates of those batteries. And if you don't have a conditioning or a multi-stage type of a charging system, then those batteries are going to get thicker and thicker and thicker with sulfur, and they're not going to be able to store as much energy. So if you want to be running at maximum capacity, that 450 amp hours, then what you're going to need to do is either get a multi-stage charger or have something that will condition those batteries, or go with AGM batteries that require less maintenance of that. They still require some. So the first thing I would look at is, what type of a charging system do you have in your rig? If it's just a typical converter without a multi-stage charge, you need to step that up. Get like a Charge Wizard from Parallax or Progressive Dynamics. It will do a multi-stage charge, and then what it does is it does a bulk charge first, which is a high impact boiling of those batteries, breaks that sulfation up. Then it goes into a float and an equalizing charge to make sure everything is on the same plane. So I would do that and just let it do it as the battery drains down and needs to be recharged back up, and keep them plugged in during the wintertime or storage if you can. If you can't, maybe look at a solar panel that has a multi-stage charge controller in it, or take those batteries out and properly charge them at your house. We have, oops, I missed one here. Chip shares, we have 2 camping trips planned for the summer, both with electric since it's a tad bit warmer. here in the summer. I must have missed something here. Oh, that's where, right there. Okay. Missed the first half of okay. David, is there a video or documentation on servicing a Dometic vacuum flush toilet? And we don't have one of those on the site at this point right now. It is something we've looked into, with the, the state of the affairs they've been right now. The RV industry has been tough to get a hold of somebody and get some documentation on that and get an actual unit with that. But Dometic has a great site. If you go on to their website, you can go into their manual section, and I'm sure you can get something on that. And one of the things I would recommend too is post this on our social media, and one of our technicians will dig into it and see if we can't find the link directly to that and be able to get that documentation for you. Is there? Chip says, how does a generator transfer switch work? And that's where the first part of it said they're going on 2 camping trips, and both of them need electricity. So the automatic transfer switch, or ATS they call it, is basically inside your service compartment. And what it does is when you're at a campground, we have this campground system right here. When you're plugged into a campground source like this, your wire comes into an ATS box, which I don't have one here with me, but basically it's a large box with a series of switches inside. And what it does is when you're hooked to campground source, it directs the flow through that way to get to your distribution center, which would be this. When you fire up the generator, it automatically senses that generator power is coming, and that switch will turn over and supply voltage from the generator to your distribution center automatically. Now, in some of the older models, you would have to take your power cord from your RV and disconnect it from the campground source and connect it to what's called a J-box. So inside your service center, you had a separate box that power cord would plug into, and that came from your generator to that J-box, and that's what supplied it in. This is like manually taking it out and putting it into the next one. So that's how it works. If you have an automatic transfer switch, you don't have to physically get out and switch your power cord from the electrical campground source to your J-box. Okay. Deborah again now says that she is traveling from Texas to Yellowstone. My question is safety. Is it okay to drive with the propane on to keep the food in the refrigerator cold? I don't recommend doing that. There is no law against it, and I know thousands of people that do it. I do seminars all over the country, and I ask a show of hands of how many do that, and inadvertently, it's probably about 80%. From what I see of people attending my seminars. I'm not saying across the country, but in my seminars. And they do that to keep the refrigerator cold. In my opinion, we've done several videos on this with several safety programs. I recommend that people drive with the propane tanks shut off. There is no law against that, mostly because there are more and more vehicles that are running on propane as an alternative fuel. Now, there are places that will not allow you to have a propane tank or have it on certain bridges. I've been the Washington Bridge in New York, the Lincoln Tunnel. There's a tunnel in Boston that I got stuck at, and I had to turn around with 8 lanes of traffic all yelling and screaming at me because I didn't know. But the reason that I say don't travel with propane on is because you have a very small, thin line that supplies propane to the refrigerator, which runs right along the side of the RV. In fact, there's a little vent right there, and you can pull the vent off, and you can literally see it there. Very soft copper, runs right along the inside of the interior cabinet for the stove and the oven, your furnace. All that stuff is, and they all have fittings that could loosen up. And, heaven forbid you ever have an accident or clip a sign or construction or something. But if you tear that line, it's going to fill that inside of that RV with propane. And yes, there is a excess flow valve that is in line of your propane system, but sometimes and that's designed that if you do have a tear like that and you got a whoosh of propane, it's spring loaded and it will shut that off. But what if you just clip it enough to have a steady flow like you would for a normal operation? You're going to fill that up. All of a sudden that refrigerator is going to start to spark, try to light, and you could have an issue. Now, what we did is we went out with both a Dometic and a Norcold refrigerator. We brought them down to 36 degrees operating temperature, and we let them set turned off for 6 hours. And both Norcold and Dometic claim that you can do this without it going over 40 degrees in an 8-hour period. And both of them were successful. They stayed under 40 degrees 6 hours later, and both of them had an ambient temperature inside that rig of almost 100 degrees. So it will stay cold. The key to doing that is to make sure you've got stuff inside your refrigerator, a pack of ice in the freezer compartment, and don't block the shelves inside, and get a little circulating fan in there. We did the very first one with nothing in it, and it shot up to 55 degrees in half an hour. And so when I called Norcold, they said, well, what do you got inside? Nothing. You got to have something for it to absorb. And I said, okay. So we retried it. Again, nothing illegal about doing it. I just think on a safety factor, it's probably best. If you do that, you got to make sure before you go into any fueling station that you go shut any of those appliances off that you have using propane, because you don't want an open flame going into a fueling station. So it's your choice. Deb, okay. So I got here. Eric, what is the most reputable roadside assistant provider? AAA, Good Sam, our mobile RV techs pretty much available throughout the country in Kansas. To me, the best one out in the market, I really like CoachNet. AAA is a great automotive roadside assistance program. They're also great with the trucks that are pulling your campers if you're going that way. They're probably not the number one when it comes to motorhomes and knowing the RV side of stuff. Good Sam has been around for years. They've got a lot of dealers all over the country. The only downside of Good Sam, in my opinion, is that they have really watered down their roadside assistance, and they have limited their service to their Good Sam dealers, which used to be just about everybody in the country was part of the Good Sam network. But now it's just Camping World and those locations. So it's not quite as easy. My number one is CoachNet. I think that CoachNet has the best technicians are on the phone 24 hours a day. They understand the RV styles and issues with that. I've been involved with them since I believe it was 1985 or 6 when they first approached Winnebago, and we gave a CoachNet program with every new unit. It was that good. It was just automatic with them, and I think they're the best out there. You don't want just anybody towing your rig because they can tear the front end off it. You don't want just anybody coming in to work on an appliance. And what CoachNet has done is they have worked with not only the manufacturers out there, but also the OEMs, meaning the Norcolds, the Dometics, the Suburbans, the Atwoods, and they've got technicians all over the country that you don't have to specifically go to a dealer if that's not the closest. You can go to a tech, somebody that's authorized to work on that. So I really like CoachNet as a provider. Dennis asks, I have a 1988 Beaver. Do you know where the pickup hose to the freshwater tank is? I can't get any good flow on the pump, but do on city water. That I do not. I'm not familiar enough with the Beaver coach. It was kind of going out of, Monaco picked it up for a while, and I'm not sure where that's at. One of the things I probably you might be able to find is there's a dealership called Holland Motorhomes up in Holland, Michigan, and they were a huge, one of the biggest Beaver dealers out in the market for years and years. They may still have documentation on that or have a technician that would know that, because they still kind of specialize in that vintage type program. I don't know if Beaver is still in the mix with Rev Group. Monaco bought Beaver out along with Safari and a whole bunch of other ones back in somewhere in the 90s. And then Monaco was bought out and the Rev Group owns them now. And it's still unclear, who is around with what. So you could possibly go to them. But like I say, Holland was a big Beaver dealer for years, and they might be able to help you out. Jody asks, oops, I'm getting something in the way here. Jody asks, I have 2 deep cycle marine 12-volt batteries. Both are dead right now. Can I charge them both out? Can I change them both out for one 100 amp hour lithium battery and continue to use the converter that came with the trailer to charge the batteries? No. And I say that with a little bit of hesitation, not knowing what your converter's like. But most travel trailers don't have a converter / charger that will correctly charge the lithium batteries. So the first thing you need to do, and I mean, you could change it out in theory, for the working aspect of it. But what you really need to do is find out what kind of charger you have. Is it a parallax? Is it a progressive dynamics? Is it a multi-stage? Most travel trailers are not, and most travel trailers are not set up for the lithium batteries. Now, I'm saying used on the market. We're seeing more that are coming out with it now, but you might have to upgrade your converter, which probably isn't, actually would be a lot less than what you're going to pay for that lithium battery. But if that's something you're looking to do, and the only reason I would change out lithium is that if you're going to do an awful lot of dry camping, then probably the reason that your lead acid batteries are dead, and I don't know if you said lead acid, 2 deep cycle marines batteries, they probably got sulfated. And I don't know if you were with us when we first were talking about it, but if they're not properly charged with a multi-stage charger, those lead acid will sulfate and they will go dead in no time. 2-3 years normally, they should last 5 to 7, but we're not charging them properly. We're not taking care of them. So they've kind of gotten a bad rap in the market, and everybody goes, I got to go to AGMs, or I'm going lithium. And if you're not doing a lot of dry camping, you're going to pay way too much money for that lithium than you'll ever get out of it. You can buy 2 lead acids, and if you charge them properly, I think you'll be a lot happier and have some money to go have some fun with. Or you give it to me. Just kidding. Eric says, we purchased a 2013 Greyhawk last November. When the AC shuts off, there is a very slight grinding sound, not a spark, not a squeak, as the fan comes to the stop. Any idea what might be causing that? A grinding sound, it sounds more like the bearings in your fan blade, because the only moving part in your air conditioner is you've got a fan motor that is going to spin the squirrel cage around, basically, and it's a motor with the shaft and the squirrel cage, and it draws the air up inside, runs it through the evaporator and condition it. So the rest of the product that's working in there, you've got a compressor, and I guess there's some moving parts in that as well. But my guess at that is you've got a bearing in that fan that is starting to it's starting to wear out just a little bit. The way you can tell is to get up on top, take the cover off the top of your air conditioner. You probably, you will be able to get to that fan motor. And then if you can just, sometimes you can hear it. Sometimes you have to take and get like a socket extension we used to use and just put your ear on and to that and see if you can isolate that. Is it in the fan motor? It could be in the compressor or the condenser, but I doubt it. I think it's more in the fan motor. So take that off and just see if you can isolate that. Oliver says, I have purchased a Class C motorhome, planning a 2,000-mile road trip. The road is relative flat on my route. Is it okay to drive with the overdrive off, light on, or on, light not on. I was told it will save gas if I drive with the overdrive off. Um, okay, so what he's looking at is he's got the overdrive button on the, I'm assuming on the shifter knob in there that basically changes the RPM. And usually that will save you gas to have the overdrive operating. But it all depends on your weight and the gear ratio. There's a lot of factors in that, and where your optimum RPM is. That's kind of what you're looking at getting at. And so the first thing I would recommend is go have your coach weighed. See how close you are to the GVWR, the gross vehicle weight rating of that. If you're up towards the very maximum weight rating, you probably don't want that overdrive off, because it's going to shift down, and low RPM is going to, and then you won't get the fuel economy you want. You know, the idea is that you don't want to be pegging up into, to 3,000 or, whatever. You want a little bit more of a cruising type of a speed, and that's what the overdrive does. So again, to get the coach weighed. Probably you might be able to take a look into the owner's manual and see, what they recommend. Most of them don't have a weight rating in it, but I don't know of too many people that don't load their coach up with everything they can possibly find, and most of them are going to be not happy with that overdrive on, just because of the fact that it lumbers. And even if you're on flat land, you are still going to find some grades that are going to take that overdrive and really work it hard. And that's not going to be good for the engine and transmission. Eric, I heard a lot of recommendations for Goodyear Endurance tires. The RV dealer we purchased our 2013 Greyhawk from last November had new Firestone Transforce tires mounted. Should I be concerned? Well, and I have used the Firestone Transforce on my trucks, on a lot of things, and I've really been happy with the Firestones. I've heard a lot of recommendations. The Goodyear Endurance tires, and the thing with a lot of these companies is there's different levels of, even though it says Goodyear Endurance, there are 2 or 3 different levels within that are made for certain weights and certain types of driving, whether you got an aggressive tread in it, which I do not recommend, because it's going to add a lot of heat to it. I think the Transforce tires are great. Like I say, I've used them on my trucks. I had not my own personal truck, but I also ran a company that we towed about 100,000 miles, and we put Transforce on those, and we had really good luck in them. We put about 100,000 miles on them, and we got about 70,000 with them. Put them through some really hot weather. Granted, they were doing 8 to 10,000 pounds, so it wasn't like the fifth wheel or stuff. But I would say with your Class C, and you said it was a, you didn't say what size it was, but Greyhawk, 2013 Greyhawk, which I'm assuming it's the Class C version, but not knowing the weights of it. So yeah, there's some good things about the Goodyear Endurance, but also I just saw an article today that one of the blogs out there said that there was a lot of problems with Goodyear. So I think you can find good and bad about everything. I personally have used a Transforce. I have had no issues with them whatsoever, and I would say we probably put, guessing, maybe 350,000 miles on them, and I think they were great. The only reason we don't have them now is that we bought new trucks that came with, I think it's the Goodyear Wrangler on the 2500s. I'll have to look that up again. I know my new truck that I just got had Goodyear Wranglers on it. I don't like those. I'll tell you that right out. They are very slippery. I don't have good, the tread wear. I'm at 35,000 with it right now, and the tread wear is down less than half. And my other ones weren't that way, and I have I get a lot of hydroplaning on the road. And like I say, in the wintertime, I got ice skates on. So I'm not happy with the latest version. And again, the Goodyear Wranglers, there are several different styles of that as well, I'm told. So I'm not sure, but I'm a Transforce fan. That's the next tire I will put on my truck. Okay. Margaret asks, the pilot light in my oven won't stay on. As soon as I try and set the temp, it goes out. Any help? Well, so the pilot light in your unit, it has to get up to a certain temperature, and it has to make a connection to the thermocoupler to tell the pilot, tell the gas to stay on. And one of two things is happening. You're not letting it stay on long enough, so it gets to the temperature it needs to be, and it's not making that connection, or your thermocoupler has gotten weak, because that tells the gas valve to stay open and keep your pilot light on. So you need to try it a little longer, leave it on a little longer so that it gets in there. And one of the things that I have done in the past is, I've turned it on, turned the pilot light on, and then I took another little lighter and assisted it a little bit. And I wouldn't recommend you do that, because if you're not familiar with gas and so forth, the other thing you might want to do is make sure that pilot light, the orifice, is clean. Just a little bit of a small bristle brush or something, just, if you got any obstruction whatsoever, you don't get enough flame that goes across and creates that opening. So you really have to determine what your level of expertise is. I might recommend taking it into a dealer that, and you said on the furnace oven. So you're probably a Magic Chef oven in that. So you might want to just have somebody clean that orifice out and make sure you're getting a good pilot light all the way through it. And Brent asks, the furnace won't come after replacing new Dometic Penguin. So the furnace won't come on after replacing the new Dometic Penguin 2. Had to flip the dip switch to get the furnace option to show up on the thermostat. Do I need to flip another dip switch to supply power to the furnace? Okay, so I would, because what's happening is that if you replaced the Penguin as the air conditioner up on the top, and now with the furnace not operating, that your thermostat is what's going to tell it what to do. And if you had to flip the dip switch to get the furnace option to show up, and I don't remember exactly what the dip switch is, DIP. I think it's direct ignition pilot, possibly, for that. But somewhere that thermostat is not communicating properly with the furnace, and I am not familiar enough with that Dometic thermostat and the operations of that, but I would venture to say you need to do that. So one of the things that I would recommend is if you could post that on our social network, and one of our technicians will get in. I will get in touch with. I have a representative Dometic that I can get in touch with and find out on that. But I guess without knowing exactly what transpired in that Penguin, it shouldn't have affected that furnace through the thermostat unless something got jumped in the thermostat too. So there's a little bit more to it than what we can talk about here without getting kind of hands-on a little bit more. So if you want to post that, and I will do a little more research on that, and tell you what, I will make a note. Angie, will you make a note for me? I will get a hold of my contact at Dometic, and if you will join us here next month, I will make sure we address that. Or you can make sure you post it in the comments next month, and I will find that out for you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And if you find something in the meantime, make sure you come back next month and let us know what you did. That's a lot of how you find things out in the RV industry. You know, I've always said I'm a handyman, and I'm learning every single day. And I come in and go, really? That how to do that? Um, okay, so Louis says, what is your feeling about extended warranties? And one of the things that I would highly recommend at this time in the industry is be very, very careful. Scrutinize that warranty, find out exactly what is included into it. Um, you know, when the RV industry is flying like it is now, you just see everybody jumping in with some kind of a product that they had in a house warranty or they had in a car warranty or whatever it is, and it isn't worth the paper it's written on, but they don't care because there's going to be 575,000 new RVs built this year. And if you have a problem with your extended warranty that you buy and you don't buy from them again, they don't care because they're going to have 575,000 people coming through. And that's a bad part of this industry, in my opinion. I've been in it since 1983. So I've seen it come and go and come and go. And you know, the nice thing about 2008 through 2011, when the industry crashed and you know, it was almost impossible to sell any of that stuff, you saw all these companies go away. But they didn't go away for good. They keep bouncing back in. Now, I do like, you know, there's some warranties out there that are lifetime warranties. And I have done a lot of research on those because when I first started looking into them, I thought, you got to take your RV back to the dealership and spend all this money getting it inspected and all this stuff. So how's that a free warranty? It's not. But, you know, you look at a budgeting issue of an RV, and you're going to pay $400 to $500 a year to take that into a dealership, and maybe it's more than that on the bigger ones. I'm ballparking, but that's a fixed cost, and I know that's going to be part of my doing business, my enjoying this RV. I probably have the same thing in a home when I'm doing that. But I don't have any of these unexpected cooling unit issues with the refrigerator that's going to cost me $4,000, or a leak in the roof that's going to cost me who knows what kind of money. So, you know, look at those. What do I need to do to maintain that, to make that warranty valid throughout the year? Do I have to take it into a dealership and spend how much money? What does it cover? You know, my biggest issues are going to be in a travel trailer, fifth wheel, leaks in the roof, the refrigerator, the appliances, that type of stuff. You know, how are those covered? And a lot of times you get in there and say, well, leaks in the roof are not covered because you should have maintained that. Well, you know, in the lifetime warranty, they maintain it for you. That's part of their doing that. So, you know, there are some good warranties out there, but be careful of those that have jumped in, that are, you know, and most of your good dealers, your long-standing dealers, they don't even offer those. You know, you see those in magazines, you see them in banner ads, you see them in places, but you don't see the dealership offering them because the dealer's the one that has to tell you, no, that is not covered. And they don't like doing that. So I would check with the dealers, and I would really scrutinize what those extended warranties are. If it covers the stuff like it says it will, I think it's great. You know, and it all boils down to how much do you think you can maintain yourself as well and fix versus what it's going to cost for an extended warranty. So you have to factor that in. Gary says, hello, my brand new Class B has a sewage odor coming from the wet bath sink. I know that the sink's water goes up to the gray tank because I verified this at a dump station by running water through it. What could cause me to smell sewage from the sink? So there's a couple things that that I would look for. First of all is the fittings, and you got a vent pipe that's going to go up to the roof in there, and a lot of times those vent pipes will work their way out, and you will have the raw sewage that is supposed to be venting up into your vent at the top of it, emitting out through the cabinet underneath. You might have a block cap, vent cap at the very top of it as well. And one of the things that we have seen is a lot of companies use what's called a cheater valve. So let's say you've got the black water tank is right here. It's underneath the cabinet, and the vent pipe comes up, but I can't bring the vent pipe through the middle of my cabinet and my sink to get it up to the roof. So they stop it right underneath the cabinet, and they put a cheater vent on the top of it is called. And it's this little cap that goes on the top of it. And what it's supposed to do is allow air to come in to that vent, but not allow sewage smells to go out. So you can get air, because in your freshwater tank, your gray water tank, your black water tank, you need a vent, just like you do at home. You've got to have a vent pipe so it's not a closed vacuum system in there. And if that cheater valve on there, and I've had them, we did a video. In fact, if you look at the Raptor video on our site where we had the cheater valve, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. I went to a home improvement store and found one to replace it. Sewage smell was gone. So I would start with that and then look for whatever vent pipes are coming off that black water, and are they all sealed all the way up, and is your cap up on the top plugged? Okay. And one other thing, Gary, and I just see it's a Class B, and you see it's brand new Class B. Make sure you document it with your dealer or the manufacturer, because if it gets to be something that's a bigger issue than that, you want to make sure it was documented in the warranty period, before it gets out, and then you have to chase that down at your expense. So Nina says, regarding towing, AAA has RV packages. They contract out with a big rig towing company to tow large motorhomes. We had our 38-foot Diplomat towed 2 years ago using AAA. The tow company brought out the correct tow truck and disconnected the transmission. Did it right. This was in Tennessee. Not sure if this was true in all states. So what she's saying is that she worked with AAA on that, and that's great. I mean, you're going to see some places that will do that. I just happen to know that CoachNet has worked with all the manufacturers on what they recommend for towing, and most of the motorhome companies don't recommend towing at all. They say get it on a flatbed, because you've got issues with the frame, you got issues with the front caps. Even if you disconnect the transmission, which you're taking the drive shaft off, you still have some issues that it's better to flatbed those, and that's usually what CoachNet will recommend. But I'm glad. Thanks for the information. Appreciate that. Rick, we have an ultra light travel trailer. Seems like we have way too many blowouts on the tires. I'm thinking it may be the misalignment or bent axle. Where would be the most affordable place to get this checked, or can I do it myself? There's a company called MD Alignment down in Des Moines that I would recommend even giving them a call. But the first thing I would recommend is go get your coach weighed. The thing that most people don't even realize is that a lot of these travel trailers have a very, very small carrying capacity, what you can put inside that. And you'd be amazed at how much stuff you start putting in. And then you put water in, that's 8.6 pounds per gallon. And you put in propane, that's about 6 pounds per gallon. And then you start putting all your stuff inside that. And those tires can't stand that. We did an extensive amount of research. We developed a training program for the RV Safety and Education Foundation through Michelin and Goodyear, who are having horrible problems with tires blowing out. But they found that 75% of tires out in the market were overloaded with the rig, or they were underinflated. And you underinflate a tire by 10% or 10 psi, and you reduce your carrying capacity by 25%. So if we're overloading the coach and we're underinflating the tires, we're going to have a lot of tire failures. So that's the very first thing I would do, is go check the weight of those tires and make sure you check the weight that's on those tires, and make sure you check the pressure that's going into those tires. You definitely want to put on a travel trailer like this what's on the side of that tire. Now, a lot of times on a motorized, you'll want to check the weight, go to the tire charts and so forth. But on travel trailers now, they're saying put the weight in, or pressure, it's on the side of the tire. So those are the first thing I would check. Then I would check with a good alignment company. And it's hard to do with the travel trailer, but there's laser alignments that can tell you that type of stuff. And alignment usually isn't a culprit in a tire blowing out. because alignment's going to show up in tread wear way before that tire ever loses pressure. So if you don't see an unusual tread wear on those tires, that's telling me that that's not an alignment issue. But if it's blowing out, then it's more likely underinflation, overloading, and heating those tires, and those are going to be your culprits. Remy says, if you are plugged into shore power and you're getting ready to leave camp, is it okay to start the motorhome and then say in 5 to 10 minutes unplug from the shore power, finish up and leave? Yeah, I mean, if you're plugged in and you want to start the engine up and cool down the front dash area of that unit, that's fine. The one thing that I highly recommend anybody does is to get a pre-departure checklist. And we have them on the site. You can download them, and basically it's going to go through, instead of you trying to remember everything that's out there, it's going to say, I need to make sure I unplug the electrical of that. I need to unplug any cables, any water that's in there. If I have wheels chalked on a travel trailer, antennas down, all the steps in, that whole process of stuff. So sometimes what I find is when you start the engine up in the front, then you get this false sense of a lot of things are done that you didn't look at. So the only concern I would have, or only recommendation, is get your list and make sure that everything's done before you pull out of that campground. Because the battery on your engine are completely isolated from your house electrical system. You'll have a battery isolation manager in between the two that will charge part of your house batteries, but it's completely separate of your 120 volt and your distribution center. Gary Hurt has a 95 National Dolphin. Congratulations, Gary. I did a lot of work with Dolphin out of Paris, California, and I loved that unit. And about 1995, they launched a big, huge dealer days in San Diego, and that was a nice unit. My 30 amp cord that plugs into the red wire and black wire both go to the generator, and I have power to the generator, but I have no power to the motorhome. Any suggestions? So you got a 30 amp cord, and it plugs into a red wire and a black wire, go to the generator. And I have power to the generators. Okay, but I have no power to the motorhome. So the black and red wire that go to the generator are 12 volt house wires, I'm pretty sure. So your generator has to have 12 volt power to start, to hit that start button with. And usually that comes from the house batteries. And so that black and red wire typically indicates that is your 12 volt power system going to the generator to start it up. That will not be 120 volt. So from your generator in that Dolphin, then you have a line that goes up to the automatic transfer switch, because I'm pretty sure that 95 had that versus a J box. So the first thing I would recommend is on your generator, you have two circuit breakers. You have a 30 amp and a 20 amp. Does your generator start? That's the first question. So if the generator starts, but you're getting no power to the motorhome, first thing I do is I go in, I check on the side of your generator, and it should be an Onan, probably a 5500 or 6500 with that Dolphin, depending on the length of it. There is a 30 amp and a 20 amp breaker. The 30 amp goes to the distribution center. The 20 amp typically goes to the back unless you have a 50 amp service. So that commonly trips. And if those circuit breakers are off, you will have no power going to your automatic transfer switch and to your distribution center. So I would check that. You should be able to even take a non-contact voltage tester and just go up to that, right in your service center where your shoreline power is at, cord. You should have a box there, and you should be able to go right in there and check, do I have power to that? It may be that 95 didn't have an automatic transfer switch. If you see a plug-in in that box next to where your cord is at, then you need to physically plug that cord into that automatic transfer, or into that J box, for power to go up to the distribution center. So those are the things that I would check. Joe asks, having issues with my slide-out gearbox on my 2004 KZ Sportsman Sportster 36-foot toy hauler fifth wheel. Any suggestions? So, I guess, Joe, the first question I have is, what issues are you having? Is it not coming out? Is it coming out jerkingly? Is it binding? What is it doing? If it's not working very well, most of the time what I find out with the slide rooms, especially some of the older ones, is they run off the house batteries. And the house batteries look like they charge, and people say, well, I'm plugged in to the 120 volt in the campground, so I got plenty of power. You don't have plenty of power if your batteries are sulfated, and you go to bring that slide room out, and if you got a little bit of resistance in that slide room with the gearing, or the sidewall being just a little bit flexed, it's going to try to draw more amp power, and those batteries are going to go bleh, and then it won't work. So if it's not coming out, or coming out really slowly, the first thing I always tell people is always level and stabilize your coach. And then that means get the jacks down, get everything stabilized and level, because you want a flush chassis, which means you got a good straight sidewall. If you got any kind of flexing because of out of level in that foundation, that chassis, that sidewall is going to twist, and that box is going to have resistance, and you're going to have a tough time getting that out. And then the second thing is, once you do that, if you're still having a problem, hook a battery charger directly to your batteries. Even if you're plugged in, I don't care. Get a battery charger, put it on there, and just see if that extra oomph makes it work. And I would say 75% of the time it does. It works. And that tells me those batteries are not storing the charge that they should be storing. You're not getting the power. And when you put that added oomph of a slide room onto that, then they just can't handle it. So, try those things. If it's doing something different, let me know. But, that's probably my guess is what's happening. Eric says, our 2013 Greyhawk, it's Greyhawk night tonight. Cool. 2013 Greyhawk has a tankless water heater. When using hot water during a normal shower, the temperature display for the water heater beeps and displays an error code that says the outgoing water temperature exceeds the safe limit. If we wait a few minutes, everything seems to automatically reset and we have warm hot water again. How can we avoid this annoying cycle? And that is something I have heard of before, and I have not been able to get a definitive answer on that. And the first thing I need to find out is, what is the on-demand system that you have? Is it the Truma has one. Atwood had one for a while. They went out of it. I'm not sure if they're back in again. It's been hard to tell with all the shutdowns and everything, trying to get information on who's doing what anymore, and we're really trying to get that back into it. But when using the hot water during a normal shower, the temperature display for the water heater beeps and displays an error and the safe limit. So I guess before I can dig into this anymore, I need to know what on-demand system you have. I think even Lippard's come out with one here recently, but I doubt that that's on your 2013 Greyhawk. There is another system out in the market, and for the life of me, it just slipped my mind. I can't think of what it is. But give me some more information. If you can post that, I'll do a little bit of research, see if I can find what was in a Greyhawk, and maybe next month we can readdress that. One more question, then we're done. Jenny asks, I have a domestic RM3862 that is not staying, so it's a domestic that is not staying lit on gas. The thermocoupler has been replaced. The fridge has also issues with the auto trying to click over to gas while on shore power. So, okay, that's several different things here. First of all, If it's not staying lit on gas, then you know, again, I get back to the fact that it has to have 12-volt power. You might have batteries. Try plugging a battery charger onto the house batteries just to see if that will make any kind of a difference. If you replace the thermocoupler on it, the next thing I would recommend is that you need to clean out the orifice on that, because if you know what the thermocoupler does is that you need a good steady flame that is not jumping around and that it's reaching that thermocoupler. So if your flame is not high enough, and you should be able to look in there and see that, and it's not getting to that thermocoupler, then all of a sudden it's saying, hey, I'm not there. And a lot of times these things can be gremlins, because what happens is that you may have a regulator, an LP regulator that's weak. So it's working okay, and then all of a sudden you turn on the stove, or the water heater turns on, or something else pulls some LP from the system, and your flame goes like this. And then it's not high enough, it doesn't hit the thermocoupler, and it says, uh-oh, I don't have a flame, shut everything down. So those are the things I would look at. First of all, clean that out, make sure your air to gas ratio is working. Then look at that flame, make sure you have a good flame. The other thing you can check your LP regulator is you can have a dealer or somebody do a water column test on it. Make sure you got 11 inches of water column. Or you can do it by just turning on the stove, turn on the second stove, third stove, top burner, and watch those flames. Are they jumping around? When you got 3 of those on and then you light the furnace or you try to do the refrigerator, what happens to those? If that goes down, then your LP regulator is insufficient and it's not providing enough LP to that system. The thermocoupler, the fridge also has issue with the auto trying to click over to gas while on shore power. And that one, if it's automatically trying to flip over to gas on shore power, then that's more of a monitor board issue, because what it's saying is it's not recognizing 120 volt power to the machine, and so it's saying, uh-oh, somebody's tripped the breaker at the campground, let's jump over to LP. So that one, you're probably going to have to get it taken in and have that module board looked at and tested. So with that, we're running over a little bit, but I appreciate everybody coming out. Great questions tonight. We got some I got some work to do on a couple of the things out there, the dip switch on the air conditioner and furnace. And then what was the second one I said, Angie? We were going to talk to the tankless water heater with that one. And I think that was it. So anyway, appreciate everybody coming out. Have a great week. Enjoy the longest day of summer. It's kind of ironic. The first day of summer is the longest day of summer. So anyway, I appreciate everybody coming out, and have a great week. Thanks for joining us.